Om Mantranam Jivabhuta Tuya Smrita Shakti Rupaya Tatahina Vadarohe Nishvalaha Sharda Bravata Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. She who is known and remembered by the ancient seers as the imperishable Shakti power is the profound inner meaning in all the slokas and sutras of the revealed scriptures. Without her, O fair ones, all the cosmic principles, the tattvas, would be like clouds with no rain. She is the perfect I consciousness, existing in all the abundance of words. And the secret of all the mantras, whose very nature is the essence of non-duality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Peace be unto us and peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. So, is there order in the universe? When you're looking at this external world from the standpoint of this particular yuga, this dark age called Kali Yuga, one would have questions about it, maybe some doubts about it. But Tantra stands forth and says, there's not only order in the universe, there's order in all the universes. And there's also a controller of that order called Sadakhya, or sometimes you could call that Sadashiva or Sadakhya Shiva, depending on which Tantra you look into, which school of the Tantras you're looking at, which division of the Tantras and the Agamas that you're looking at, then you'll find these terms used side by side or sometimes in accordance with one another. And that's what we want to look into in the second class of this series, jump right into this profound philosophy of Tantra, which if you've been raised in yoga, hopefully the Sadanga yoga, or even the Ashtanga yoga, because one is more Vedic, pronounced in several of the Vedas, and the others Patanjala. Or maybe you've been raised in the Vedanta if you were fortunate to come to one of those centers here in the West and apprentice under a Swami, as I was fortunate enough to do. If that's the case, then you probably have had some teachings in Tantra. That is, if you read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna in the case of the Neo-Vedanta that Swami Vivekananda brought to us, then you know that he's speaking a lot about Samkhya Yoga, but it's all blended into the fabric of what the overall teachings are coming from such a great master. Or maybe he's talking particularly about tantras and worship and deities and so forth, which he was very big on. It had, as the Ramakrishna Upanishad says, deities revealed themselves to him by the dozens. So there was a period of his sadhana where he broke through that veil that is lying between maybe what we looked at last week in the chart that we were using, the bhuvanas, all the worlds, and then the tattvas that they're made of, and then the kalas, or kala, who's presiding over it all. That's more like Sadakhya. And it's the operator, controller of all of those facets, which are called in Tantra the pure order of things. I want to show you a quick chart on impure and mixed pure and impure tattvas, which doesn't have anything to do with what we've been raised in as far as morals and ethics and commandments and laws and so forth. less to do with that than it has to do with how close they are to the source. If they're further away from the source, then they're called impure. Like you might say, Kopula's 24 cosmic principles are all classed in a category called far from the source, or nivritti, they're to be renounced. Nobody would covet them. Earth, air, water, fire, ether, tasting, touching, hearing, smelling, seeing, the tanmatras, and the fourfold mind, the pure astika body, as it was called in an earlier time, eightfold body. No one would covet that as the truth. That would be clinging to life, as Patanjali talked about it, abhinivesha. So you're going to want to use those vehicles, and in Tantra you'd want to deify them, but it doesn't mean that you can somehow turn them into Brahman, turn them into Paramashiva. They all have an order, call it a pecking order if you want, and some of those lower tattvas then are just called ashuddha, impure. They're far flung from the source of pure consciousness. Others are shuddha. They're kind of mixed. They're let's say like Maya. Maya would be a mixed tattva in Tantra. It's got good and bad things in it. It's like the mango in its skin. You don't eat the skin, so it's not actually that good. It's bitter, but it does keep the mango safe while it ripens, and then it's sweet. So that's a combination of things, shuddha. And then there's these principles like Sadakhya, which I'm mentioning here, and I want to make sure that we're clear in case last week anyone was unclear about that. It's a principle that's used in several of the classes of Tantra that sometimes is, like I said, just in accordance with, they call Sadakhya Shiva, or you might have heard Sada Shiva. Sadakhya is really two words. Sad means real or true, like pure existence, Sad. And then Adakya means a face, or sometimes they say a mouth. So if you looked at all the tattvas that fall under the pure order, they're being operated by something. That's why I said, is there an order? Is there order in the universe? See, we know that when we look even at the impure order of things out here with nature, volcanoes going off, but yet providing us with land to grow food on thousands of years later. There's all this change going on. It's got an admixture of things that are not that difficult to class if you're paying attention for any length of time, if you're focusing on it, as even Lord Kopula wanted you to do. Here's the order, concentrate on them so that you know what are the building blocks of the universe around you, not just the physical universe, because he went into the psychical universe and the mental universe and the intellectual universe, which we've studied, probably one of the greater facets of why we take to the Vedantas, so that we can look at those higher levels called Vijnanamaya Kosha, Anandamaya Kosha, and the way they've been classed in different Indian philosophies. So that principle then that operates everything has probably been on our minds even in the West as when we were young, teenagers and so forth. What is it that's behind this, or what is it that's making this happen? It could be as difficult a prospect as, why am I suffering? Or why is it that I do one thing and another thing comes back to me? Why is it I do a good thing and a negative thing comes back to me? And then sometimes vice versa, people do negative things and they get good things back from that, at least temporarily. So all of that has perplexed us, so that people who have intuition but who don't have discrimination yet, is probably a good way to put it. They haven't been taught by a teacher in a particular darshana, in a particular path. They haven't found their path yet in a teacher to listen to. So they have to make some conclusions on their own, particularly here in the West. So you probably grew up making those conclusions yourself. And hopefully, and then you found your way to a great path with a teacher who could adequately explain these things to you, so that then your conclusions got modified to match higher authority of what I just chanted. The Adya Shakti, how she holds all of these pathways inside of her, and how she, in as Tantra will tell us, is one of the two of the highest of all principles, along with Shiva. The Shiva Shakti principles are paramount in the tantras, and depending on which tantras you look into, there's 192 of them, I think, and they're classed into 3 different classes. There are basically 5 different types, and basically you know them: Shakta, Vaishnava, Shaivite, and then Saurya, worship of the sun god, and then Ganapatya, Ganesha. Those are all based on classifications of the tantras. And so it's very important for us to try and gain some sort of understanding of it, even though it is very esoteric. And you've heard me say that of all the philosophies I've looked into in India, the darshanas, that probably the 8-limbed yoga Patanjali is the most complex. When you look at the mass of it and the number of commentaries that were put out on those few 4 chapters or padas of sutras, is very amazing. But it can't compete with Tantra, because Tantra was really never systematized by anyone. Even inside of these classifications, each one of those was not systematized really. And so it's very difficult to ascertain the age of the tantras. The estimates right now are probably nowhere near as ancient as they really are. They're basing things on the Mohenjo-Daro Valley and Tarapaho, basically the digs that they've been doing anthropologically to find these images of Shiva, basically, that the beings back then worshipped. And then they're carbon dating them, seeing how old they were. Were they preceding the Vedas and Upanishads, or did they come after? All the questions are being raised about that. Maybe a little bit futile to even look at that, but to look at the body of the work, then you find out that they've really graced all the other systems of India with this heart, with real heart, so that the philosophy didn't become, as Vivekananda said, too dry and intellectual. It had to be sweetened by the heart of things. Doesn't mean that Tantra doesn't have a profound depth to it, because, like I said, very difficult to even put it all in a certain language so you could actually understand it. They haven't even done that with all the Vedic scriptures yet. So with this little introduction to the second class, we're looking at who controls this, and at what level is it being controlled. That's why we look at Sadakhya or Sadashiva, because from that pure principle, everything else gets lent its power to manifest itself. Remember last week I told you that if you looked at the Shadadva, that is the 6 ways of coming to Brahmajnan, that Kala was the first, and if Kala being the first was defined as being that principle which helped everything to come from an unmanifest state into manifestation. So that could be at many levels. It could be at the level of, say, the fetus in the mother's womb. There's a power there that's helping that process go forth. the inception process. And that's just at a physical level. But then you take that same principle deeper and deeper, and you see that the very breaking of consciousness into form from a formless state is guided by this highest, very pure level of tattva called kala. And that way you wouldn't just define it as Shiva and Shakti. I mean, time, basically. Because those are lower tattvas. Kala and kalas means time and how it breaks into cycles. There's a power that directs this. And we don't look at it that way. It's like, oh, I think my mind is refined enough now to try and comprehend what's happening to me in time. And then we start breaking it down into centuries and millennia so we can look back in time that's already passed. And then we start living by it in terms of months, days, minutes, and seconds that we draw breath in the embodied condition in. So to think that maybe time had an inceptor, but and of course you'll come upon the whole ideation in Indian philosophy that it's cyclic, which is what Lord Buddha was trying to renew or cause us to remember. And not linear as we're thinking about it here in the West in science and so forth, if we even think much about time. But it's actually a cosmic principle and it has an operator. That's kind of what I'm saying. So the best word for that is, because you won't be able to, like in Vedanta, bring Brahman into action. That's not going to happen. You want to leave that actionless, pure and perfect. Talk about a pure tattva. It's not even a tattva when we talk about Brahman. It's the same in Tantra with Paramashiva. That would be the equivalent to Brahman. In Vedanta would be Paramashiva and Paramashakti, you might say, but it hasn't broken into Shiva and Shakti yet. So its own force, the awareness in its own consciousness, and consciousness can be waves and levels that vibrate at different levels of spanda, we're going to call it here. We call it vrittis in yoga and so forth, by vibrations. So it's going to with its own awareness, break out of formlessness into form. Now, if you remember the teachings on the word, then you know that everything comes down in 4 stages. And right now we're at the stage of the word it's called Vaikari. It's actually, the word is broken into objects, worlds and things. And we have to look back at bhuvanas, these different worlds that happen, in order to understand that, because they're one of the ways in which we will attain Brahmajnana, by looking at the development of worlds. I mean, call them the kingdoms of heaven inside of you if you want, if you can't quite yet grasp Indian philosophy and you're still thinking in terms of a kind of Christianity that's been here. And try and think of it as my Father's mansion has many chambers. It's like that these worlds are many. Remember, I looked last week and we said several hundred or more of these worlds, and 14 of them broken into 7 and 7 higher worlds and 7 lower. So we're looking at those, calling them bhuvanas, and then patlas in the case of the lower worlds. So all of these are being overseen, is a good word, by this principle of Sadakhya, which is a tendency towards helping everything manifest itself, so that it can enjoy its own potential. See, enjoy means, of course, to savor or to realize itself. That's what Shakti will do for Shiva, because poor Shiva is sitting there, just this mass of pure wisdom, and she's going to take that and turn it into various aspects. And so that power is in Shakti, in Shiva, see, but it's coming forth from Shiva to take it and manifest it into various things. It's a little bit difficult to explain, but maybe that's why I did some homework of a different kind. And these quotes I'm bringing here about Sadakhya will help us understand a little bit more from the source. I'm using like scriptures like the Samo Tantra, or sometimes I'm pulling from books like the Philosophy of the Tantras, or from the Ontology of Tantra, and sometimes quoting from the Tantras himself, which and some of the Shastras. So these quotes that I'm about to read to you about it are pulled straight from them, and they have to do with Sadakhya Shiva, or sometimes also this chief tattva called Kala, the first of these 6 that we're talking about. So about that, what I was just saying is, here's a quote. Kala Tattva is the necessary guide who helps seekers of truth realize the different grades of the Absolute. It works on the self in the act of realization of the self. So it works for the self in order to help manifest what's in the self. So this is this very first of all of these 6, Kala Tattva, being operated by Sadakhya Shiva or Sadashiva. And note how there are different grades to the Absolute. They're not shy about talking about the Absolute breaking, the ocean breaking into waves, and having different levels of depth and so forth, and what are at those levels. So you'll have to understand that they don't have the restrictions that sometimes strict Advaita might put on things. If you've heard about Brahman being formless and formless alone, Tantra goes more towards these levels of consciousness and how they sport, how the sport happens through them, through these great operators. Here's a quote about Sadakhya itself. Sadakhya is the principle of being in which universal experience begins. So universal experiences would be at the level, you'd have to have time, and you'd have to have worlds, bhuvanas, and then you would have had to have had some sort of way to speak about them. That would be varnas, letters, alphabets, as we were talking about last week, and also something to explain their depth, like mantras. So that usually to us comes after the fact. We've had a Western education. We've learned about the meaning of words as pretty much on the outer level, and then we find out that there are deeper meanings to these words, and mantras would be the science of that. Padas and mantras, remember those were 2 of those 6 we looked at last week. So it's a very thorough system. Shiva Tattva and Shakti Tattva stand foremost. Below them is Sadakhya, or Sadashiva, which energizes all with knowledge and action. So the foremost are the Shiva Shakti principles. Remember, Sri Ramakrishna said these are like fire and its power to burn, or water and its wetness. So he was trying to give these simple clues to the fact of the existence of this principle of Shiva and Shakti, which he saw in everything. You can see it in the movement of clouds across the blue sky, seeing both of those. That is the stationary principle and that dynamic power which causes things to appear on its surface. You can see that everywhere. If with an eye like Sri Ramakrishna, you begin to look at things like that. You're actually looking for the manifestation of Shiva and Shakti in the controllers, in the words you're using, in the worlds that you're living in, and in the mantras, that is the words of wisdom that you're being given to understand these things. You have to have a special eye and concentration to look at those and then render them into, oh, I see what's in hiding. It's a little bit like Vivarta and Vedantas, where there's been something covered, and you want to penetrate through it and see it to its source. Vedanta accents Maya, but don't think that that power of Maya is not there in Tantra, because it is. So selecting some quotes here about Sadakhya. Shiva, through his Chit Shakti, operates using Sadakhya, the other pure tattvas, to produce tattvas of the pure impure order, like Niyati and Shuddha Maya. So there's Niyati, cosmic laws, and we'll look at that a little bit today when we look through this 36 cosmic principles. And then all of these are involved in the science of sound and form in terms of para, pashanti, madhyama, and vaikari. Right? We're just talking about vaikari as being here. All of that work has been done, and the controller of these 6 powers of wisdom have made it so that the tattvas have been manifest. You have to think back what we're saying, that it's the power of everything to help it go from non-manifestation into manifestation. So that's been done, and you can prove that by looking at the tattvas. Remember, physical tattvas, psychical tattvas, and spiritual tattvas. We looked at those last week. There's a dozen of each in each category, basically, or more. So keep that in mind when you think about everything breaking into form. Another way of looking at that is the manifestations of the word. It starts out supreme, para, then it breaks into pashanti, where everything has a potential to move towards manifestation. Then it's in the middle state, where sound, word, meaning, and vibration all come together. And this is, in the great mind, if you're talking Samkhya, or in a high level of consciousness, if you're talking about Vedanta, and then turning into the worlds of name and form and time and space, which are made of physical tattvas all around us, like the elements and the senses and so forth. And this has all been known by India for a long time immemorial, as they say. So it's through his Chit Shakti that Shiva uses this power called Sadakhya and other pure tattvas to produce tattvas of the pure impure order. That's a good place to interface into, out of the quotes, which are still some very good ones here, into this look at tattvas that are at a lower level called impure or ashuddha, and tattvas that are shuddha, mixed. That's what this chart is all about. And I was wondering whether to take this one first or these other two first, but we might as well get an advanced start on it because these are simpler. There you see those principles that are inherently pure by nature. And then these here on the left-hand column of the lower half of the chart are mixed and pure, that is mixed, pure and impure tattvas. And on the right-hand side, there's the ashuddha, what Tantra classifies into basically the fourfold mind, the tanmatras, the senses, desire, the 5 elements called Mahabhutas, and the body. Those are considered to be very gross manifestations of this principle of consciousness. So they'll classify those under ashuddha or impure tattvas. And in Shuddha on the left, and you can see the definitions of each of these here in a few words. We know that the Antakarana is a fourfold mind. Tanmatras are the 5 elements in their subtle state. Indriyas are 10 senses connecting to the mind. Kama is the force of desire and attachment, which has a deeper controller to it too. And then Deha is the physical body and all its constituents. And the Mahabhutas, of course, the 5 elements in a gross state, because the Mahabhutas also can be in a very refined state as thoughts. And then you see, and it's good that we put this here, because these then begin to go beyond the ken of what we've heard or known in the West. We wouldn't be able to find these in any school or educational system. We had to have come upon the Indian darshanas to find out about them. But like I said, when we were young, we were thinking about these more with our intuition. If we were thoughtful people, we're thinking, well, there must be a source to that, or there must be a cause for that. And it's not being taught to me, and I can't see it here in the external universe, and my parents aren't telling me about it. Neither is there any school teaching on the subject. So I had to come to some wisdom teacher or come across some path. Maybe I even got perked in my consciousness or in my thinking consciousness by a class on religions. Sometimes you'll see those, and people have gone to college and taken a class on different religions, and then they'll get interested in something they hear, and then they'll start to pick up on some of these subtler principles. Well, these all are things that, we heard of the soul, Purusha, who's been explaining it to us very well, including religion, because the soul that we've heard about comes and goes, but in this rendering, the Purusha is pure conscious awareness, and it's Prakriti that does all the coming and going. All action takes place in Prakriti, Krishna says in the Gita, not in your soul. So that soul is immovable, stationary, very much like Brahman. So that's why it stands at the top of the order of 24 cosmic principles in the Samkhya philosophy. You're taking everything back when you dissolve the mind stream to the Purusha, also called Atman in Vedanta. And so those are vibrations that have come out via the mind. And then when you take them back, like in deep sleep or in meditation, or at the time of death when you have to, then you take these vibrations back into your soul. So you could say that Samkhya, Yoga, and those darshanas are very much in accord with Vedanta. And probably Samkhya is so much in accord with Advaita too. In the Satkaryavada path, they really think in the same way and move to their conclusions in much the same way. So you see that's at the top order of all of these. Basically, it's just beyond Ashuddha, and it become more pure. But other thinkers were thinking there must be something beyond the soul. There must be a soul of souls. And so they jumped to Ishvara. See, the chosen ideal came into the picture. Or maybe at one time it was the Trinity. Well, let's jump to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and they'll help us explain all of this. But in the jump, they passed through all of these things. They passed over all of these things, which later thinkers and philosophers, in their meditations and in their deepest contemplations, began to find a place for. That inside of themselves. They saw it inside of themselves. And that was that principle of Kala, that is this Shadadva, first of the 6, was its place. It was bringing everything into expression, and that was its function. But you didn't see it bring everything into expression. You didn't see how for instance, the Shakti power, which we don't ever hear of in the West, and we don't hear of much in religion around the world, but back in India, it's big. All of a sudden you hear about the Shakti power that's at the foundation of everything, and some people have even made the excusable mistake that Shakti is Tantra. I come to Shakti Tantras. There are some Shiva Tantras, and there are some Vaishnava Tantras, and there are some Shakta Tantras, but the important role of Shakta really comes forth there, and in that. I mean, I have some more quotes here in which we could cite, but the point here being these pure, impure tattvas are standing between your soul and Ishvara, or Shiva and Shakti, because Shiva and Shakti stand above Ishvara. Ishvara is the what they vest the power of experience in. So it's the firstborn, it's a primeval soul. It's been called different things. So everyone looks to it. All the different religions have their forms of it. But that's actually one of the things that's distinct about India, is that it is calling it a form. Ishvara is a type of a form, but it's at a very, very high level of form. See it here. Also, sometimes it's called Antaryami. This isn't a purely tantric chart here either. It's just it's treating the idea that's been in India a long time, that there's an order to things, as we started out the class saying. Some of that order has fallen to a very deep state. I'll show you that in a minute. A very deep state means a very gross state. It's vibrating densely. It's probably one way you could put it. If you wanted to plug in everything that was going on for you under the control of Kala, that is, how the tattvas are being produced, how they're being turned into worlds. Remember, I mean, if you want to just take a quick look at it again, there's these divine aspects. There are the categories, which are air, earth, fire, water, and ether, and all these things that we're breaking into pure and impure, right? And then there's bhuvana, regions, all these lands, worlds, 14, remember, 224 realms, but they're broken into these 7 and 7, which are, some of them are patalas, which are lower realms. And then there are letters, words, and utterances. You can almost draw a line here between these three and these three, because these three are more toward the Sadakhya principle of controlling, bringing things from unmanifested state into manifested state. It's like, you're not breathing, all of a sudden, I think I'll breathe. You see, so that's that tattva of Kala telling you breathe, and then breathe out. Well, now hold your breath. Everything has a controller like that. It's just that we're not conscious of it. But when we become conscious of it, then we've been conscious of Brahmajnan and its roots. And then we become like Kala. We become like the Lord. We cut ourselves in the image of the Lord. We begin to realize ourself by the power in the self. That's what I just said here in this quote from the Kularnava Tantra. So these things that you're going to be plugging in, I just want to give you a quick look at that again, so you know that what we're talking about when we talk about Sadashiva or Sadakhya Shiva, that there's some things you're going to be plugging in here. Kala as time would be one of them. So it wasn't included, in much of what we learned when we were growing up in the West. Time, nobody could explain it. Pretty soon they decided it was linear, and it was connected only to history. So it never had a connection to your thinking process. Just back in physics, it had a connection. So you didn't think of it as a principle that was cosmic in origin, and that there was a controller of time. I mean, what do you think Buddha was when he distanced himself from the Kala Chakra, right? And that was him getting up and out of time. And he described it as a river going around and round. And if you sat on the banks, then you saw what was in the river. If you went around in the river, you didn't see the things behind you and the things ahead of you. So that was the predicament that all of us are in or were in when we were totally unaware of the power of time and its controller. So Kali and Kala, both Shiva and Shakti, are well named in that way. But as a principle here is what we're talking about. See, this is a principle of time. It's got a place back inside of us. And seers that have come to know that, they become Trikaladarshi, right? Adihi sasam yoga namitta hetu kalas trikala dakalapi dristaha, out of the Upanishads, basically. You become the witness of the three phases of time. So where are they? Where do they originate? Where does time begin? You'll hear that it has no beginning and no end, but you won't know that till you find out where its origin is. And basically that it's eternal. That's what beginning and endless means. Doesn't mean non-existent, it means eternal. Everything in Tantra is eternal. And you know, you get right down to it in Vedanta, that's their conclusion too. It's all eternal. Everything is, nothing is not, Holy Mother said. So the is not part is what you have to do when you're starting to take wooden nickels, or when you're starting to suffer and you're taking the unreal for the real. And we know all this, you have to weed your garden and get your mind straight, your thinking straight. When you get your thinking straight is when you begin to plug in these parts of your being. I mean, if you keep the Vedanta that you've learned alongside the Tantra, then you're going to be thinking like in a comprehensive way. You see, you're going to be knowing that when you hear about these things, you're relearning about your own self, right? So there was a guide somewhere in you that's helping you do that. At the highest level, that would be Ishvara. On the next level down, it would be Sadashiva. I mean, sometimes the Tantra switch that up. Sadashiva is the highest, Ishvara falls below it. It depends on which of these schools you're referring to. There's the Shaiva Agamas, there's the Vaishnava Samhitas, there's the Shakta Tantras, there's the Tamil school of Shaiva Siddhanta, very powerful school. There's Kashmiri Shaivism you've probably heard about. That's also called Pratyabhigya, how to recognize something, how to recognize what is. And it's also called the school of Spanda. It's actually a school where they said these are vibrations in you. So Spanda really means vibrating worlds. It's also called the Trika, if you've ever heard that in reading about people talking about reality in Tantra. And then there's what's called the Agamas. You know, the Tantras and Agamas very much closely related. I found something about the Agamas here that's very beautiful. To save souls lost in the three malas, that's the three kinds of imperfection, who cannot yet cross the sea of birth and death, Paramashiva created the 18 Shaiva Agamas from the form of pure sound. Then he assumed a state of Sadakhya with its sixfold paths called Shadadva and taught these Agamas to the 10 Shivas and the 8 Rudras. That's from a historical retrospect of the Tantras, a book called Historical Retrospect of the Tantras. So beautiful ways in which they're looking back on this ancient philosophy of Tantra that's been contributing to all the other darshanas and who have also been contributing to it. This is the way India is. Indian philosophy and culture is synthetic by nature. Tolerance and accommodation form the basic characteristics of the Hindu mind. It pins its faith on identity without underestimating the importance of difference. That's from the philosophy of the Tantras. The state of supreme consciousness in Tantra is called Paramashiva. It descends as a realized self via 36 principles, which are its expression in its embodied form. The imperfect I must awaken from the eternal slumber. They call that achit sometimes in Tantra. See, it's unconsciousness. So Tantra states, Prabuddha sarvada tishtit, get thee ever awakened. So how to awake and stay in this insomnia of yoga we've been talking about, which our founder Lex Sixon used as coined as a phrase. So there you see that you've got these different schools then of Tantra, including the agamas. There are actually more than 18. Those are just the Shaiva agamas. There's about another 10 or so that have occurred in this beautiful philosophy we're now looking at called Tantra. So there we're looking at this pure order of tattvas, right? We haven't looked at that yet, but we're looking at what comes after it. And in matter of how this is getting revealed to consciousness, that is helping itself express everything that's in it. If you wanted to go back before Bindu Kalatita, Bindu Nada Kalatita, go back before that inception, that's called the Srishti Rahasya secret of Tantra. If you want to go back before that, then all of this was all held in potential in Paramashiva. Sort of like we would think Brahman can't be the cause to anything, but everything is held in potential in it. Like Ramakrishna used to say, the boy came into the kitchen and saw the vegetables dancing, and in the hot water in the pot. So he said, "Oh mother, look at the vegetables are dancing." And she said, "Well, the vegetables can't really dance on their own. It's the water that's causing that." And then the father comes in and said, "No, dear, it's the heat in the water." And then the grandfather comes in and says, "No, dear, it's the gas that's heating the water in the pot that's making the." So they each had their deeper and deeper level of what's controlling everything, basically. So Sri Ramakrishna told this story, and it's so perfect in accordance to these level of expressions called tattvas in us. So, I mean, we can't just leave it at Samkhya then and think, well, the tantras are kind of insentient, and then there's a Purusha. And he, she, it, the Purusha, genderless probably you would want to say, the Atma has no gender, is purveying all this. It's the purveyor of everything. If it becomes the witness, if it knows itself, it has to come to awaken, right? So Tantra is already mentioning this slumber that consciousness falls into, as it were. And so the whole purpose of a great guide like Sadakhya as a tool for Shiva and Shakti to awaken what's the potential that's in Parama Shakti is being enacted, and it's turning into all of these principles. So we always talked about how Kapila did his homework for us, particularly in the physical universe, to let us know what the building blocks were, at least Indian version of it, if you want to step away from physics for a while in science, evolution and only. But you can see somebody did a lot of meditating, probably with the help of the Samkhya tattvas, and started thinking deeper. And so this is pretty much a reading of the Samkhya tattvas. It's an impure order of things, means it came a long way from Brahman to be this, you see. Or from Paramashiva, if you want to say. But if you come closer and you begin to think about this maybe as like dissolving the mind stream in Vedanta, that these are the things that you're dissolving, right? But you dissolve them back into the Purusha. But now, you're standing there as the Purusha, and you think, well, Purusha, as it were, where's my controller? How did I become? And it's like saying the awakened soul says all of a sudden, who awakened me, and how did I awaken, and who am I, by the way, that got awakened, and how did I ever fall asleep in the first place? These are very, very deep questions that only come upon a person who does deep thinking. Unbeknownst to most people, the deep thinking they did made them enlightened, but they're not thinking of themselves as enlightened. They still think of themselves as asleep, because suffering still goes on, and they don't know everything. They can't remember their past births. I mean, there's a whole host of things you could start throwing in there that are causing people to think, I'm not enlightened. I'm not enlightened. No matter what they say, enlightenment must be an experience of great ecstasies, and I haven't had it yet, you see. But this is the beauty of the tantric view of things, is it's just looking out upon everything that is within it, or you might say looking in. As we know, Vedanta has already given us the beauty of going beyond the internal and the external both. So we have some sort of inkling that the world's out here, the bhuvanas, we flip it back and look at it, and the worlds inside of us are not the ultimate thing. Because Vedanta, the Upanishads say they went beyond the heaven-seeking senses. So that means beyond the tanmatras, means beyond the antakarana. That's heaven thinking. And many religions are into that, whether they call it heaven or paradise or whatever they call it. That level of people who are in the religious lineages and traditions of the world, this is like new ground for them. And it can be very new ground for us to start thinking in an awakened way like that. Get the ever awakened. Prabhuda Sarvada Tishtat, get the ever awakened, because that's your true nature. And so, very much similar to arise, awake, and stop not to the goals reached out of the Upanishads, right? Utistata, Jagrata, Prapya, Vrani, Bodhata, get yourself ever awakened. So this is what you'll start to see in order to find yourself back to your chosen ideal. Right now they're saying, here, take this mantra, it's got Ishvara's name in it, do it. Maybe we hope something will awaken in you, you see. We hope you'll have a remembrance of your relationship with God as you do this mantra. Because, if we look back here and we see that mantras are really at the foundation of that sixfold teaching of Shadattva, you see that mantras right there at the end, mystic utterances. So we will have to put it together, maybe in reverse, that by doing the mantra, we're going to become aware of the power in words, right? In words, pada. And by that, we'll begin aware that there are letters to words, different alphabets, and that there's Shakti power in them, see? And then beyond that, there are inner kings of heaven within us, regions, that are peopled with many, many beings. See? And everything that's the stuff of consciousness, of thought, is there, making up those things. And that will go all the way back down to the mantra, to where we'll look at this and we'll say, all this is filled with Brahman. And in the meantime, we're coming down without this knowledge and saying, all this is Maya. Or we're coming down and say, I don't know what Brahman and Maya is. I'm totally clueless. I'm just living a life in the world, that's all. And I don't know how to think deeply. I don't know what to think about it. It's all a paravidya to me. The paravidya hasn't occurred to me yet. And Tantra admits right at the outset that it's not for everyone. That you have to be very qualified to step into a region like this, a realm, to be able to think about this Shuddha Maya that we just talked about in this quote. There's a very pure level of things. The Maya down here, not so pure, is it? But the Maya as a cosmic principle from which everything came, this sleight of hand, this projecting power, as it was engaged in by Sadakhya or Sadashiva, is a very, very high level of tattva. It's almost pure. If you went beyond it, then you would get to the pure tattvas. All of these, just take a quick gander at them. Niyati, cosmic laws, raga, it's like the power of attraction. Have you ever thought about that? What is it that attracts me to some things, makes me averse to others? Why do I love God? or why do I love my child, see, and so forth. And then vidya, pure wisdom. Where does all this knowledge that's here, that I'm hearing my teacher speak about, where does that come from? Where does he or she get it? Where did they get that wisdom? That from a cosmic principle way back inside called vidya, pure. It's almost as pure as it can be, but it's still got a mixture of impurity in it. Shuddha, they call this. So keep your mind on these real quickly. These are some 6 things there. And we'll look at this next level, which please don't be daunted by it. It's a lot to look at, but out of one of these great schools, I think I'm drawing mostly from Kashmir Shaivism or Pratyabhijna school when I give this order, because there's another chart which I can draw from a different school that puts things in a little different way. But basically, these schools are agreeing upon what the name of these tattvas are and how to understand them. To make this chart easier, let's look at what's below Shiva's navel. That's a good way of putting it too. So basically, all of this are the impure tattvas we just looked at: air, earth, fire, water, and ether, tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, smelling. The fourfold, the tanmatras, sparsha, shabda, rupa, rasa, and gandha, basically the origins of your 5 senses. That's where you trace your 5 senses to. It's good that it's filled in here. So basically, this is all easy, although it's a lot of words. It's the Sanskrit equivalents to all of the 24 cosmic principles that many of you are familiar with in Samkhya, that we've been studying for some 30 years, along with the Vedanta and SRV. So that's easy to accomplish, you see. It's here where the Purusha stands, right? So here's manas, chitta, buddhi, and ahamkara. What is that called? That's called the antakarna, right? So there's the antakarna right there. So it's standing above all of those things that I'm pointing to in the other chart. Antakarna, it's just at the very level of what's called ashuddha, bridging on shuddha. The mind can be either impure or it can be pure. One of the Upanishads starts out saying that. Mind is of 2 kinds, pure and impure. It's the first sloka in one of the Upanishads. So when you have done your accounting process for the lower tattvas of the ashuddha, impure level, then is where you come upon these, what we just looked at as mixed, pure, and impure. There you see raga, attraction, the cause of everything as far as Maya is concerned. That wisdom we talked about, that's still of a mixed order, but will get purer. So you see above it, Shuddha Vidya. When it becomes extremely pure, it's in the pure tattvas category. And then all of these other tattvas here, Kalas, Niyati, and the Purusha itself, you see. So these are all bubbles to indicate the mixed tattva. So I don't want to switch the chart on our viewers, nor do I want you to look at this chart, but I'm going to read off it while you look at these. So you'll keep your attention on these, and then you'll know the definition of what raga, vidya, kalas, niyati, and so forth in one sentence what they are. So raga is power of attraction, adhesion, attachment, involvement. So why do I love? You can say, why do I have this love in me? People are going, I don't know why I love him or her. Devotees are saying, I don't know why I love God. But there's a source to that love, and that's called raga. It's this power of attraction, and it's a place inside of you. It's a principle inside of you. And it can lead you to a higher understanding of of love of God, like Ishvara. Why did you come to the path in the first place? Was it because you didn't love God? Or was it because you wanted to know God? Or it can become very soon that that is your love of God, his love of self. That there's no difference between thou and that. Aham and idam, we call that in Tantra. So here's the next stepping up out of the 24 cosmic principles and the fourfold mind. The next thing you would encounter then would be these pure, impure tattvas. Tattva means a principle, and those principles are within you. And so that means time is within you, the power of attraction is within you. So how about yati, cosmic laws and their natural order? That shouldn't be too hard to understand right now, because that's the whole thing we're talking about right now, is there's an order in the universe. That's how I started out the class today. There's an order in all the universes. And this is the stepping order. You've heard about it in Vedanta over the last 30 years in SRV as evolution and involution in Samkhya. Or you've heard about it as a projection of mind, and it's dissolution. We're really pretty much saying the same thing here now, but in the tantric view, we're showing you how they step in and find these very esoteric principles inside, which is otherwise is rather a vacuous place between the Purusha and the Lord. No place to lay your hat, hang your hat, no place to step in. So they stepped in and they saw these things and they said, there it is, and here's what it's called. And it's in you, and here's the connection to its controller, Sadakhya or Sadashiva. And that's going to connect you back to the original premise of Shiva and Shakti. And where these things become just 1/1000s, they say in the Tantras, 1/1000s, it's hard to say that, of what's there in the Parama Shakti. See? So Vidya, cognizance of awareness of differentiation, or the very presence of Shakti. So all of a sudden you say, I have this wisdom, but why is it so difficult to grasp? And why is it that I can't hold it, for myself? And I can't fully understand it. And that's because you haven't found the source of it yet. This is at a very high order, still pure, impure, because there's a Shuddha Vidya that's higher than this. See it up here? It's the non-dual state of pure awareness. So there's still some levels and steps down to where you come to the very principle of knowledge. But this is much, much higher than what's in the Antakarana, in the Buddhi, in the Chitta. See? That's why the intellectual mind doesn't satisfy us. That's why we can't believe a savant or a scholar over a seer, because the savant and the scholar are here, and the seer is at least here in their understanding, and the non-dualist is here, Shuddha Vidya. So knowledge has its steps. We're used to thinking about this as apara and para, but in Tantra they have apara, para, and parapara, the supreme of the supreme. And this would explain then why we're so attracted to Advaita, for instance. That's the supreme of the supreme. That's Brahmajnan, from which the Tantras want you to practice these 6 ways to get to. From the controller, him, herself, Shiva, Shakti, Sadakhya, all the way down to the mantra, they want you to become in full awareness of this. These are the dynamics of what's going on inside of you that you could never find words for, that your thoughts stumble upon but you weren't clear about. And that's just how deep and how profound Tantra is. I mean, you can't divorce it from Vedanta, from Samkhya, obviously, or from yoga. So, I hope you appreciate the commentaries I can give you, but I'm trying to give you the barest English definition of each of these pure and impure tattvas. Shuddha, they're called. Go up to kalas, that's phases of time and space, i.e. ages, or we'd have to borrow a word, yugas. Ages to us in the West is, let's look back to the Mesopotamian age, or let's look back to Egypt, or so forth and so on. But the Indians, the Hindu mind's looking back yugas, to Mahayugas, to Manvantaras, because they know time. Their concept of time is in infinity. See? So there's where you say time has no beginning, middle, and end, but it's not that it doesn't have an existence. It's a principle of Sadakhya. It's there as something that guides everything, isn't it? So this is why you say time, space, name, form, cause and effect. That's 5 things. Usually that's how Vedanta is saying that's the Maya down here at a very low level of vibration. That Maya that's stupefying us. But if you can define it, as Vivekananda told us, as name, form, namarupa, then time, space, kalas and then cause and effect, karma. Then you have a much deeper grasp upon these tattvas, and you probably won't then make mistakes when you hear that time has no beginning, middle, and end. You won't say, well, that's because it disappears in samadhi or something like that. It's there as a foundation for all the samadhis. It's a natural sahaja concept inside of consciousness. So this is where Tantra looks at the highest thing as that consciousness wants to express itself. It's in the nature of consciousness to do that. But in a lot of the other schools, it's like, let's get out of this. Let's get beyond this. And samadhi to us will be all of this goes away, dissolving the mind stream and so forth. But this deep urge, vichikirsha, I mean, there's probably no other word in any language that is so indicative of and explicative of this deep desire that's in Shiva and Shakti to manifest what's in Paramashiva. Otherwise, things like the word wouldn't be there. They wouldn't be so powerful. They wouldn't take over our thinking process and cause the seers to remember the divine Shakti, the imperishable Shakti. That's what I chanted starting off this class. They remember her. Without her, all of the tattvas would be like clouds with no rain. See, all of these are nothing. Don't you feel that way about your life in the world of air, earth, fire, water, and ether, and sense organs and their enjoyments and their sufferings? Didn't you feel at one time, or haven't you felt before, that it's all like empty? And when you fulfill yourself, if that's possible, satiation never comes, but if you can fulfill yourself in it, you still feel like, I'm left high and dry now. And you can become an intellectual thinker at the level of the antakarana. You can say, that did not satisfy me in the end. What's this dissolution of mind they're talking about? What's this higher consciousness? And Tantra comes leaping forward at that time to say, well, here, my name's Sadakhya, you see, and I've got 6 ways that are very good in convincing you that all of this is full of Brahman. See, it's full of consciousness. That's why Sri Ramakrishna, one of his favorite views was Vasishtha Advaita. He said, basically, Brahman has become the 24 cosmic principles. I mean, you wouldn't say that if you were a strict Advaitist. Well, I have to go beyond qualified get to the highest and stay there, and that's me. See, well, maybe it could be, but what about this play, sport that took you there? Tantra focuses on that. Brahman has become the 24 cosmic principles. Maybe it's not them, as you cannot minimize it or limit it, because those limitations we're actually kind of looking at right now, aren't we? They're not absolutely pure like these up here. Ishvara, pure sound, pure wisdom. There's Sadakhya right there, see it? And how it gives rise to the Purusha, how it informs the Purusha. And there's the Bindu, Nada. You see, Bindu, Nada, and Kalatita are very important aspects of the word, Shabda Brahman. So Tantra is very much, I've told you before, all the Indian darshanas love the word. It's best signified by the Om sign. Right? You'll find it everywhere. You'll find it in Buddhism. They all love it. So, but Tantra's special relationship with the word is that it forms part of the highest, purest tattvas that are possible. And you probably would want to keep it pure when it comes down to the level where the Purusha can begin to understand it and express it, and where actually words become things, as Holy Mother said. Thoughts become words, words become objects, don't they? So now I have a word for the object. But if I want to trace the object, then I'll trace the vibration in the word to what the object is through meaning. And then I'll take that back into the mind. And then I'll take that mind back into where it came from. Time, space, mixed wisdom, Maya. And now I have a place and order for these things. And there is an order to things. It's been declared in the highest philosophy that there's an order to things. And those who fall into disorder, they've forgotten the Adidaiva Vidya. See, the original divine wisdom is based upon these tattvas of pure, mixed pure and impure orders. Sorry for the English words, but, and I've already cautioned you about, it doesn't mean like, virtue and vice kind of thinking. It just means how close they are to the source, and then how a little bit further away they are, and then how distant they are when it comes to air, earth, fire, water, and ether, and objects and bodies, deha. We already looked at that. The grossest one on that list was body, the physical body. So you can imagine the predicament of people who think that they're the body in this day and age. They have no other way of thinking. They're attached to the body. Dogs, cows, animals attached to the body and to a few senses that can enjoy through the body with no brain like a human being has. No real brain to speak of. So when there's a brain, and then the brain cognizes that there's a mind, and then the mind sees that everything that's within it has come about from these higher, pure tattvas, that's called enlightenment. That's called illumination. It's called pure understanding, and that's up here with pure vidya. See, vidya and pure vidya. So, what else about kalas is phases of time and space, ages and yugas. Remember, these are eternal. Not gonna. They seem to come to an end. They seem to have a beginning, but they don't. When Christ said in the beginning was the Word, he wasn't trying to communicate that there was a beginning and an end to things. The church fathers misunderstood him. That was just the beginning to a cycle he's talking about. But cycles are in kala, and kala is a concept that's much vaster than time. Like I said, that's a principle of existence in Shiva and Shakti. They're going to have to say, well, let's make time, and let's make time for, for 224 worlds and divide them into 7. You see, let's make time for that, dear. You could just see them sitting together side by side. You say, so let's make space too, because we're going to have space for all of our children that are going to come out of these tattvas. You see, we have to make the tattvas too, so they'll have some place to go. You see, and some of them are going to be bedrock, some of them are going to be sand. They'll have to figure out the difference themselves. You see, if they want to keep free of suffering and remember us, if they want to remember the highest principle in them, Shiva Shakti, then we'll give them these. We just read that. Because people suffer, to save souls lost in the three malas who cannot cross the sea of birth and death, Shiva created the Shaiva Agamas from pure sound. Well, there's pure sound here. They're at the very level of the highest word. You see, the highest tattvas are these Shuddha. See, this is Ashuddha, not so pure, mixed Shuddha, Shuddha, and then Shuddha. Now look, you see, that's over here. Let's wait for a second till we get through the definitions. What about Maya, the formless material of the worlds, the deluding power? So there's where there's going to be a grain of sand in every bed. There's going to be a hair in the ointment, in the food, in the mouthful of food. And so basically there's this sleight of hand going on at a very high level. Formless material of the worlds, of all of these worlds, and it's going to take form, isn't it? So you're talking about things like the tanmatras, which we already talked about, were pure, impure principles. But in order for there to be sound and an ear to hear it, then there's going to have to be the thought audibility. So that's a principle in the high mind. It's neither the ear nor is it the sound that the ear hears. It's the principle of audibility as a principle. That's a law. And it will be the same for touch. We'll continue on with ear. It's going to come down and it's going to be connected with ether, right? And it would be the same with every element and every tanmatra it's connected to. It's going to have to be connected back up to these higher tattvas. And Maya is going to be one of those ones that you'll find it starts out there as formless material. It's sort of like saying unmanifested prakriti in Samkhya. Unmanifested prakriti is a very, probably more current way as far as Indian time is concerned of explaining how everything is a seed in the mind. And this is fleshing it out quite a bit, that same understanding. Shuddhavidya, non-dual state of pure knowledge. Okay, so then we're starting to get into the pure tattvas. So what I was going to say, if we can come back to this and look at the pure tattvas before we end the class, but let's look at this 12 spandas of the spanda system. I told you that some of these tantric schools are named different things, like Kashmiri Shaivism, Shaiva Siddhanta, Pratyabhigya. There's one called Spanda. There's even a scripture called Spanda that's talking all about vibrating spheres. But what it adds to the quotient is that there are beings in the spandas. And when I read here that to save the three beings caught who can't get beyond the rounds of birth and death, those are beings that haven't got the mantra yet. I have a beautiful chart on that. Maybe we can show next time. Then you've got the Mantreshvaris, and you've got the Vajreshvaris, and you've got these different levels of being who fall inside the realm of knowing Shiva. So basically, they know Shiva more. If they know Shiva, but they're still attracted a little bit to their ego, then they're medium grade beings. But there are beings that are falling far below them, who they're still trying to find out that Shiva even exists by using the mantra. Those are lower grade beings. So with some of these systems in Tantra, they take it, they're talking about tattvas, principles, and controllers. You can intuit the presence of consciousness and your guides in them. But then they'll come right down to mapping out these different levels of intelligence, beings that, and so obviously here in the Kularnava Tantra, they're saying basically like, some of these beings are just caught. And when Shiva saw them, well, how did they get that way? I better give them some more scriptures. I'll give them 18 more. Shaiva Gamas. They'll come in through these principles out of his mind, through this vidya, this Shuddha vidya, and they'll have to fall down in a pecking order down to the minds of men, and they're going to have to hopefully be astute enough to explain them to people so that these words can be saving grace. Tantra means that which saves. And so what does it remind you of? The four padas of Shiva, right? That's why Shiva stands. He's born in the world. Like a Vivekananda is a perfect example of Shiva on earth. That's why those beings are born on earth to make sure the scriptures stay there in the minds, even in the eyesight of the devotees. So we don't see that so much. You go to India or you explore India a bit. Oh, man, so many schools there that are involved, and you're probably not going to be able to find out much about them because they're not speaking in English. They're still using Sanskrit and their own dialectic in different parts of India. But there's so many of them, and hundreds and thousands of people who flock to these teachers who are pretty much examples of the four padas of Shiva. That's the four ways in which Shiva embodies and acts in the world to keep this wisdom fresh. So if you're hearing this as a Western person, and to the best ability of a Western student of it that is trying to share it with you, then you can begin to have a memory of Smriti Bedu, a memory of almost a taste of what you've been intuiting since you were born, and what you've been seeking, what you're after. That will satisfy you. Vivekananda said, lower knowledge will satisfy you for a little time, but wisdom will satisfy you for all time. This wisdom will satisfy you for all time. I mean, basically, wasn't desire one of those elements, what they put in the lower tattvas, kama? The word kama takes on a much, much higher meaning in Tantra, no doubt. But nonetheless, you can say that there's this desire in us. Call it raga if you want. You see, the power of attraction. Yeah. You get attracted to your teacher, see, for some reason. You get attracted to a path. You get attracted to your consecrated partner, you see, husband, wife. You get attracted to the baby. Yajnavalkya says this is all for the sake of consciousness. This happens. But if your consciousness hasn't awakened and isn't aware of itself yet, then these very things that we're just talking about become routes to suffering. We see it all the time, right? So how do you explain suffering? The seers don't even try. I read about one person who was supposed to be such a great teacher, has got a famous following nowadays, went to Ramana Maharshi. What is suffering? And Ramana Maharshi wouldn't answer the question, stayed silent. When you could get any words out of him, he said, it's a path to God, suffering. But he wouldn't want to tell that to just anyone. Who could understand that? Who could believe it? I thought happiness was a path to God. Are you seeing many happy people get realized? Aren't they still dying? Aren't they still in fear? Aren't they still attached to objects? Do any of them have a path and a guide that they have absolute 100% faith in? The kind of faith that detaches them from all of the things and makes them lovers of divine? Anyway, if you move up this ladder here, what I wanted to say before we run out of time is that here in this chart, with the Shiva Lingam characteristically placed behind it and the worship that's being done on it, I took this shot myself at the Dakshinesha Kali temple in Calcutta, of one of the 12 Shiva Lingams that's being worshipped. And the priest had just finished putting the flowers on it and the tilak and everything. And it was beautiful to watch, and had a very beautiful little tiny temple about the size of the room we're in here. And if you go there to Calcutta, outside of Calcutta, you can go see that yourself. But put this as a background to this list of principles. So we might as well, while we look at this, what I want to bring you into notice is the levels that go up the side of the chart. But let's go ahead and show the pure principles first. Paramashiva is not a principle. That's ultimate reality. All principles would be in it. Shiva, Aham, I am, and Shakti, this is, are the highest of all principles, actually, guides, or highest reality. And he's full of power, but she's the activator. So what does she bring out? Existence, experience, will, intelligence, dynamism, and production. Spending some time last week working with this person who's attached to the occult powers. Why did Krishna say, don't be attached to the occult powers, Arjuna, because you'll never get God realization if you're attached to even one of them? Why did Sri Ramakrishna say, occult powers are like crow droppings by the side of the road? You don't want them. But yet people are still attracted to them and want them. If they were just to know what the powers of God were as compared to the powers of nature, then they would give up the powers of nature, and they would get a true attraction, right, raga, to those powers that are in Maya. And they would start understanding that here's what you talk about when you talk about what's in Shiva and Shakti, pure intelligence. Like Sri Ramakrishna used to say, man himself is a power of God. And what else is a power of God? Intelligence is a power of God. So those are much better than domination over others. Levitating your body in the air. What's wrong with you, see? These are the true things, and this is all Shakti's powers. Don't you want her powers? Don't you think that'll be best for you and everyone else? Be best for everyone in the bhuvanas? If you had them and you could somehow confer them upon others or share them with others. So coming down from Shiva Shakti, you see the static, all-pervasive synthesis, and then her dynamism in indwelling essence. The vibratory rate there is none. See, and this is beyond vibration. You can see then that out of that, there's Sadakhya, called Sadashiva here, knowledge force, the word, nada, sound, combined with intelligent expression, bindu. So you have these powerful words that we looked at over here, which had to do with those highest tattvas. There's nada and bindu right there at the top of the pure order. Then, so that's your guide, and that's what this whole class is about. It's about Sadakhya and these 6 ways, Shadadva, that will help you get Brahmajnan. So if you were to look, I have to keep playing these back and forth, but if you were to look at these, Sadakhya and the 7 paths of knowledge leading to Brahmajnan, then you would have a full course to study. And some of it, all of you already know. I mean, you're very much in the know of Samkhya. You know how Vedanta explains things in the Upanishads. You're aware of Advaita. And yogic practice, certainly you're aware of that. All of this is growing in leaps and bounds in your memory. See, it's not like something you're learning new. It's in you, and you're just making it manifest. Well, that's what they're doing. And that's what she's doing with him. So, well, please don't go to sleep, Shiva. with all that you know and all that you are, what's going to happen to the worlds and all the people? Here, let me take some of you and make it, give it to others. You see. And he goes, sure, I'm limitless. Go ahead, take as much as you want. And then she turns it into all this. And it's a system, you see, that it's an eternal system, Adidaiva. It's an eternal divine system. And now what you have to do is learn it again, relearn it if you have to. You must be avid about it. And you must have intense longing for it. If people have forgotten their love for God and their love for others, their real compassion, then they don't have knowledge of raga yet. They don't know why they love. They're loving for all the wrong reasons, all the wrong things, for the wrong purposes. And it's leading them into suffering. That's the proof of it right there. So basically, Shiva Shakti, there's your Sadakhya. This class series, we're focusing on him, her, you see, Sadakhya Shiva or Sada Shiva, and all of these ways in which we've already looked at last week. So in your notes, and if you look back on the recordings and so forth, when you do, then run the riot act on your mind. This is what you already know. Now just remember it. Take a picture of it inside. Photogenic memory kind of thing. I saw that chart. Now I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to put it all together. I see. There it is. There's Kala. There's Tattva. Oh, what a Tattva. How many categories are there? There they are, listed, written with letters of molten gold across your interior consciousness forever. But a couple curtains dropped there. Tear those away. We're Vedantas. We can think those away. You don't have to asana them away, breathe them away, chakra them away. We think and it's gone. We already have this advantage. As you come down the scope, then you've got Lord of the objective worlds, Ishvara. Then Shuddhavidya, the pure knowledge. Then Maya, and this what we studied already when we looked at the other chart. So two different schools, but pretty much with the same basic wordage, verbiage, teachings, padas, varnas. So to close the class, because I wanted to bring us to this far so that we could see the order here. See, so pure order, all of these up here, you see, pure order of things. Then pure order, this is pure order Shantyatita. This is where you'll find Vakdevi. She has all of that in her. So Shantyatita in the Tantras means mother. And then the next level of pure order is just called Shanti. You see, now, so this is beyond peace, and this is peaceful abidance. The graphs are very important here, so you can see, is there an order to things in the universe? What is that order? Where do they fall? Where does that order fall? What's in them? And how do they abide? And where am I? And how high can I climb? How deep can I go in this ocean of wisdom? But I have to know where I am. So if you come down below these 6 that we studied, that is 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7, then you find the Vidya, impure order, and that's called mixed knowledge. That's where you'll find things that are actually of a very high nature that we reckon, you see, including our individual soul, our Purusha. And why wasn't that enough? Why wasn't it enough just to know the 24 cosmic principles in the earliest times? And why did thinkers come along, in hordes in India with this synthetic mind and with this desire to save people who are suffering and fill in all those gaps for us, all the way down to the element earth. There's one quote in the Tantra. It says, from Paramashiva all the way down to Kshiti. Kshiti is earth. That's the sweep, you see, of reality and all the way down to its grossest tattva, element earth. And that's called, these 24 that we looked at, called, very interestingly, nivritti, to be renounced. See? So we haven't renounced these, so we don't know these, right? Come to a dark age and say, they don't know this. Quick, give them Ishvara and a mantra. That's the quickest way that they'll remember that there's something deeper within you, something powerful inside of you. Call it Divine Mother herself, you see. But that's what's attracting many of us in this day and age, is this beautiful Mahashakti, Mahamaya, which we sing about to end this class. Sarvagyana Shakti Mahakundalini Jivatma Paramatmadarini Shri Devi Rudrani Kalaratri Devi Vijaya Devi Maheshani Shri Yogamai Chit Shakti Devi Jaya Vijaya Devi Vasundari Shri Mantra Shakti Mata Deva Devi Dasa Tattva Devi Shakti Darshini Shri Devi Padam